I guess with that, 6 o'clock, so Bucyrus City Council Joint Special Committee meeting. Today's Monday, August 12th, and we're beginning at 6 p.m. I guess call it to order, and members present are Andy Schock, Bruce Truca, Doug Fote, and myself, Dan Weyerable. I guess that's it. First up, National Night Out on Tuesday, August 6th. Pushed Council's regular scheduled full meeting to Thursday, August 8th, which pushed Council's joint regular committee meeting to August 12th. Joint special committee meeting was called to order by myself at 6 p.m. Any public participation? Anyone out there in the crowd, that big crowd, got anything you guys want to talk about?
We are going to be discussing the Pines Reservoir this evening under public lands and buildings, and that committee will be called to order in just a few minutes. So if anyone else has anything else that they want to address, now's the time.
Anything other than Pines? Okay, nothing. All right, we move on. We don't have finance committee, do we?
Finance committee is not meeting this evening because there was no quorum.
Right, so skip that whole thing. All right, so I guess I'll
Get in
I'll call the Public Lands and Buildings Committee to order at, must be 6:01. Now, can we do public participation? You want to do that at the beginning here?
Your choice.
Yeah, let's, any public participation, just all we need is you to give us your name and address, and then you can speak. I think you want to speak? Yes, you.
Me?
Yeah, you had your hand up earlier.
We live right on the Pine.
Okay, what was your name?
Hertha Hetzel.
Okay, I know that.
Address?
I live 3909 Stetzer Road, Bucyrus.
We got this guy back here keeping track of us.
We signed in and got
Okay.
one. We have like eagles come into our yard and all kinds of animals. I mean, that's our site. That's where we live, is in our porch back there. There's just we had beaver, we've had coyote, we've had deer run through our yard. I mean, they live around there. They need that.
Because it's a water source and a food source and they hide well.
That's Mike Hetzel.
Yeah, I'm Mike Hetzel, 3909 Stetzer.
Okay, so you're just telling us how nice it is, which is, I agree, so. Anything else? Anyone else, I guess? Okay.
Yeah, maybe break that off. We live at 210 Apple Street in Bucyrus. Most of you know who I am already. I can't remember if I asked at the last meeting I was at. Has anyone ever contacted Josh Dyer of the Park District?
Yes, we have.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, Crawford Park District turned down the option to take over the reservoir because they could not find a way to get the funds necessary to be able to fix all the issues that are
Aren't there
present.
grants or things for stuff like
Yeah,
this?
how far have we gone to find this out? All the possibilities of federal, state, county grants of any kind.
I don't
Giving
know.
up the reservoir, no one's checked on it, that's kind of shaky.
We always seem to find grants for murals and tennis courts and swimming pools and things like that. How come we can't find a grant?
People fish out there too, in canoe.
It's one of our, I'm thinking of them on 946 South Walnut Street. I've been going there since I was born. That's my family's fishing spot. That's everybody's fishing spot. It's really a great resource. And I know that it would take a lot of money and there would have to be, I don't know. I would like it to be looked into more to see if there is a way to possibly save it. I just think it could be it's a great resource already. I think we can make it a greater resource for our city if we really looked into ways.
I personally know people that come in from out of town to fish and to duck hunt
Yeah.
in the city reservoirs.
And
It's
people
a
would,
small source of revenue for Bucyrus, and that's part of it.
more people would be here if anybody had known about it. We were in Marion when we were told.
Yeah, I had a half hour.
Same.
Information about this meeting went out Friday to all the media.
Friday morning.
What media?
Hmm?
Not everybody
The
knows.
Telegraph Forum, Crawford County, the only things that are available to us, Crawford County now,
Not everybody.
the newspaper, I mean, it's been on our website. Those are the options that we have right now.
Sir?
Yeah, Glenn Steiner, 3226 Cruise Court. What's the plan, or where are we at on doing something with it? Are we giving it away, or where are we at the moment?
Well, I think that's what we're gonna start discussing here, in just a little bit. We've had been approached by, Mr. Murphy.
My understanding is one person has been offered.
Well, one person has approached us. I don't think we've
That's
offered,
never been
we haven't
to
offered
anyone.
anything that I know of. I mean, someone's offered something, I don't know of it, so.
And what's where's the ODNR stand on the whole thing and giving it to a private citizen? Anybody want to think about that, or?
And I think the law director and Mr. Murphy was down there. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah,
What's their opinion, what's their stance?
I guess it's a good time to kind of update everybody to make sure we understand exactly where we are in the process. This has been going on for, well, 45 years.
Right.
March 28th of this year, ODNR finally responded to us and pointed out in a letter that we had failed to make any of the corrections previously requested, that our proposal, our most recent proposal for a schedule to fix things was unacceptable to them. They did accept one thing, which I don't think we've actually complied with. And that, based on the fact that our schedule was unacceptable to them and that we had not complied with their request to fix things, they issued what is called an order by the chief. And that is an order that makes specific findings. They go on for about 15 paragraphs about all the things we have not done. And then they make specific orders, and that the city has to comply with these orders by a date certain. Failure to comply with these, as the chief's report points out, let's see if I'm in the right paragraph.
What page are you looking for, Rob?
Just the language with respect to the chief's order. Should the city fail to comply with the enclosed chief's order, please be advised that an enforcement action may be brought against the city, including but not limited to an action for an injunction and civil penalties to enforce the order and for violation of Ohio's dam safety law. So civil penalties, in addition to the repairs and penalties that are necessary for us to remediate the dam into one of their three things. To buy some time, we filed an appeal of that chief's order, the March 28th order. The hearing on that is set for October 17th. The hearing is essentially a mini trial before an administrative appeals officer. That will be a trial where we will bring our experts, ODNR will bring their experts, we'll bring our administration, we'll bring council members to answer to where we're at, what our plan is, and what our financial plan is to meet their order. If the administrative appeals officer determines that we are right, they could extend or modify this order. If they agree with the Attorney General's attorneys, they will enforce this order immediately, and could enforce it retroactively. One of the things that are gonna come up is, since this order was issued on March 28th, what have we done since March 28th, between March 28th and October 17th? At that point in time, we'll either comply with the order, or, as the Attorney General did earlier, or late last week, the Attorney General will sue us for failure to comply, and we'll pay fines and penalties. That's where we're at. The order does, like I said, it does a nice job of giving some of the history going back to, 1978, the first problematic inspection.
Or what Pat Murphy in the meeting, that was his question.
Oh, that meeting, Pat Murphy had requested a meeting with ODNR to discuss the possibility of purchasing the dam and whether or not ODNR would even be agreeable to it. The attorney for the Attorney General's office emailed me and said that they would not meet with Pat Murphy because he's not a party to the lawsuit at that point without a representative of the city there. So I took that Wednesday and went down, and they met with Mr. Murphy. They explained that they would be willing to transfer the liability from the city to whoever purchased it, but they wanted a completed action plan, specific dates, times, those sorts of things, of when it can be done. They talked about the three possible options, which are kind of the three possible options that ODNR had previously given us as part of its order, which was either remove the dam completely and remediate the land, repair the dam completely, or drain the reservoir to a level where it no longer meets the definition of a dam, remove the parts of the dam that would be surplusage at that point in time, remediate the earthen banks and those sorts of things, and remediate the land around it. At that point in time, it would be a few acre lake. At that meeting, they indicated that they would be okay with either one of those, as long as, there was an order for that. And that's kind of the same thing that's in their order here. Breach or modify the dam, or repair the dam, which is three options that we have. And I think Administrator Carroll has previously given us some estimates on the cost of those three options and what they would require.
I guess my next question is, how come we can't not drain the dam down below the level that it would be a dam instead of giving away city property?
You can, you just have to pay for it.
Right.
And so that's the question.
Can't we vote on it? I mean, put it up for a vote, like this?
To the Bucyrus citizens
Yeah, we voted
and
to
property
raise our
owners in
taxes.
town.
We voted to raise taxes, things like that. How come we can't put that on the ballot?
It takes a year to get it on the ballot. We don't have a year.
How long does Pat Murphy have to do the repair?
That's between him and ODNR, right?
It would be at that point in time. Any agreement we enter into is going to require them to pre-approve it.
What does he plan on doing with it?
I have no idea.
So far, the options that he had given us when he was here the other night and spoke to us is he said that he would like to possibly drain it low enough to where the dam was not an issue anymore, and possibly hold catfishing tournaments out there, is something that he knows about and has contacts with.
Something the city could do and bring it down below where the dam's not a dam anymore.
Right. Here again, he also said that basically all his end uses would be public use things. He wanted to possibly contact with Pheasants Forever or Ducks Unlimited, he said, and use it for that as well. So I can't speculate any further other than what he told us tonight that he was here. So
How many acres is it?
44 acres is the water part of it.
How
There's 160 acres in the total land and everything that is farmed east of the water.
What's the correct answer on this? That's important.
Correct answer.
On the acreage, because then we just have three different answers.
I don't know what the total acreage is right now. I know that they estimated from that meeting that I was at, the estimate on what it would be if it was drained down below what the level was anywhere from 4 to 6 acres would be what would be left of water.
How much?
What?
4 to 6
6
acres.
acres?
4 to 6. Someone-
46.
Four.
Four,
Six,
say.
yeah.
Ms. Hurt?
I have a question that was touched on Thursday night by Mr. Schock. He had asked if the administration for the city of Bucyrus had met with ODNR, and I thought there was a no on that. And that it had only been the engineer of the city, which is Branstad or Carroll or something, that had met with the ODNR. So I want to ask the mayor specifically tonight, has the administration met with ODNR on the Pines
I haven't
Reservoir?
personally met with them. We've been working through our engineering firms, and I know Rob met with them here last month, so. These orders that it's been going on a couple of years, you know. If you look at the history here, when we brought this to the attention of council, that, you know, something's gonna be coming down the pike here pretty quick.
Yeah, so I called ODNR today, and first thing out of their mouth was they said, you guys have known about this for 30 years.
And that's what Rob said.
And
I said 40-something years.
so
Well,
there's,
that's broken 30 years.
there's got to be some paperwork over in the office across the hallway here about this issue, and I want to know, your safety service director has been in office for at least 8 years. Why was this not brought up 8 years ago? And second, right now, since the engineering firm is being the middleman here, it's in their best interest to make money for themselves. So how do we know that their numbers are accurate, this $1 million?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why are we paying this engineering firm? Why did we contract with these people if we can't trust what they're doing for what we're paying them to do?
But we do trust.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm asking Kirk kind of that question, like, why would we spend all this money if we're not gonna trust these people to do their job?
We do,
I
I
mean-
don't think there's any level of mistrust between them at all.
Well,
They've been excellent
they put
engineers for us.
sidewalks in the middle of poles.
Excuse me?
And they're in business to make money.
They're in
You
business
ever
to
got a
do,
second opinion?
Well, they're city engineers. This happened before I was in office. They were within Mayor Moore's administration. They were chosen as the city engineers. They've been top-notch engineers all the way through. They have an excellent reputation.
You know, the Army Corps of Engineers used to come out and do that.
Mhm.
You could contact them and they would come out and figure out what it took, and the price was pretty considerable. Lower than $1 million.
Do we have a cost for what it would be to drain it down? What's the cost of that? I know $1 million to repair it, but what's the cost of draining it down below the dam?
Because you have to reclaim the land. I think it was in $250,000 range.
We're down to
Don't quote me on that.
$400,000.
I'd have to check. I don't have the figure right in front of me.
I'll drain it.
Historically, what happened is that we may have gotten this order back in 74, 76, somewhere back in there. And a lot of cities our size also have the same issues that we do. The thing is, ODNR started at the top of the pile, the ones with the really big problems, and they've worked their way down, and they're now down into the area where we are. And we're not the only ones that are facing this with reservoirs and other things, you know, that have been on ODNR's list for all these years. And it's just now that this has come up on their list of things to address. Other administrations have just simply said, oh, they're not pushing us, we're not going to do anything. Well, we got the note that says, hey, you know, there's no more of that. Now is the time that it has to be addressed. So that's why we're having these meetings, to determine what we need to do, how we're going to pay for it, or what we need to do with the property.
Could you possibly hold them off if you would take everything but the dam and the spillway? And then you got a list there of infractions to address those and start getting onto them. Since March, what has been done? Add the list.
I don't know. I don't know what's been done since I mean, that's not, you know,
I asked that question.
we
again.
pass the laws and things like that, council does, but the administration manages all that, so.
What was the cost again to drain it down?
I don't have the exact, I believe it was $250, around that $250,000 range, but I'm not 100% sure.
But see, it's not just as simple as that. The list here, and if any of this makes sense to you, that's why we have an engineering firm, is emergency preparedness plan and EPP is $40,000. Data gathering is $50,000 to $120,000. Inundation modeling and mapping, go figure what that is, that's $100,000 to $150,000. Operation, maintenance, and inspection plan is another $60,000.
This is the engineering?
Inspections are another $80,000.
That's
These are all
Branstadter's
things
numbers.
that are required to be done.
Well, Mr. Chair, to be clear, that is a preliminary step that is needed for all 4
Right.
reservoirs. A portion of that goes to number 2, but 1, 3, and 4, we still needed all that done too. And to be very, very clear here, I really don't care what you do with it. But my job is to protect the city from legal liability where I can. And the only dog I have in this fight really is the fact that we have a chief's order in front of us. And on October 17th, we're gonna go to trial. And coming out of that trial on October 17th, I mean, we're looking at problems, we're looking at liabilities, we're looking at all kinds of things. And if we go to that with no plan, with no definitive plan, if we go to that and showing that we've taken no steps, if we go to that showing that we haven't even appropriated the money, or we don't even know where the money's coming from, it's not gonna go very well. So that's my big concern is going into that trial, because I know kind of how this is gonna play out. You know, our engineers aren't really denying that the dam needs work. I don't think anybody is denying that the dam needs work. The question is, what is the time frame and what is the scope of that work? We've got to be prepared for that. We've got to have those answers. And we'll be there. I mean, the mayor will be a witness, the head of public lands and building will be a witness, finance committee is going to be a witness, our auditor is going to be a witness to talk about what we can do, what we can't do, what we can afford, what we can't afford. And I will guarantee you that they really don't care very much about what we can't afford. We found that out with EPA in the past. So that's the issue. I mean, there may be multiple options on the table, but the only option that's not on the table is doing nothing.
What
So
was the
we've
original-
got to come up with something.
What was the original plan that the ODNR didn't accept? Our plan, was it a 10-year plan, 5-year plan, was it to fix the dam, was it?
No, that was one of the things that ODNR pointed out, was that they didn't like our plan because it didn't have specific dates in it.
Okay.
They did accept our, of the plan that was presented, the 3 separate schedules. They did accept the first schedule, which was the preparation of the emergency action plan and inundation mapping for reservoirs 1, 3, and 4. And they note that it was hereby accepted and approved, but we haven't done it yet, because we're dealing with all the other issues. They rejected our plan for the remedial measures as incomplete because it did not satisfy the requirements to bring the dams into compliance. They want a revised schedule for approval. The schedule for Reservoir 2, they noted, was incomplete because, again, it didn't comply, it didn't have a timeline and all those sorts of things. So, and that's the basis of their order, is those 3 things.
Now, did you say these hundreds of thousands of dollars is covering dam or reservoir 1, 2, 3, and 4? This is just for the Pines?
That's just for the.
Just for the inundation study. That we,
All of them?
yeah, the inundation study, as I understand it, that's been upgraded now. I think that, didn't they tell you it was even more the last time? But regardless, the inundation study is preliminary. Before we can do the actual repairs or whatever we plan to do on the dams, ODNR wants us to submit the inundation study.
But we wouldn't have to do that for
We wouldn't have to do that for 2 if we got rid of
That would
2.
save some money.
Yeah, but we've got to get those done before we can do anything.
So that's including 98 Reservoir Dam also?
Yeah, all four reservoirs. yeah.
Are we saving that one, or are we gonna give that one away?
No plans on that one.
Yeah, so
What are we gonna do when that one's falling apart?
That needs some remedial work
So
too.
we're gonna fix that one?
That one's gonna be, that'll be fixed.
But its location between the two, the Riley and the Othwaite and the way the piping and everything goes, that one comes into play, that has to remain.
There's gonna be some work supposed to be done there, but it's not anywhere near as expensive as this.
You know, there's land that the city owns east of the water, of the reservoir itself. Am I correct? There's a farmer been farming something over there.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some, yeah, I don't know how much acres are, we've been,
Why don't we approach him and see if he wants to buy that, put that money towards repair?
oh, yeah, I
Oh,
know.
wait, yeah, excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Yeah, well, if the council decides to, put it out to, for auction or put it out for bid, there'll be public notice on that. People will have a chance, but whoever would be the winning bid will have to be able to be approved by ODNR.
For the land
He's talking
section?
about the farmland, not the
I'm
reservoir. He's saying
farmland,
just sell
not
the
water.
farmland and use the farmland bid money that you can use to repair the reservoir.
To start on this repair work here.
We don't own that much farmland. $1 million?
yeah, there's a
Two
little
hundred
bit.
fifty thousand, what you just said.
If you would take that money and work on that list of trouble that we're in, if you could get them off, I'm sure ODNR would say, okay, you're making headway, keep going. And then you could project in the next few years.
I don't think Headway is gonna work with ODNR. I mean, they've been writing letters to us since 1979, it looks like, and.
Well, someone sure fell on their face in that.
Sure did.
They've had a lot of different administrations in there.
It doesn't matter, it's all the same city.
It's, so there's, and our administration's had plenty of things to keep us busy too, and, we came to council a couple years ago and said, look, this is gonna be addressed, and, council decided not to do anything at that time, so, I mean, we have been,
Really?
we knew that was coming, yeah,
It
2007.
seems like we always wait till there's a deadline next month to hurry up and do something.
Well, we don't do that. We've
We
been-
did that, we did that with the bike lane, we had to hurry up and get a
Yep,
decision.
Veto
on the bike
everything.
lane. Now we gotta hurry up and get a
Well,
decision
it's
on
up,
the
I'd like
bike.
to say, like what Rob said, we're not pushing anything. We just know something's gotta be done. If the council decides to save it, that's fine with us. We're not, administration is just, we wanna just make sure we don't get fined and we can comply. So if council decides to keep the reservoir and borrow the $1 million or raise
You keep
water
saying $1
rates.
million.
He's talking about repairing the dam
Yeah.
and keeping it back to right where
We
it's
know
at.
that's not gonna happen.
Just let me finish. All right?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Council will make the decision with whatever they want to do. There's three options on it. They're either going to sell it, we're going to breach it, or fix it. One of those three things. Each one we've been talking about for 2 years. And we've had several, a lot of you folks are at the first meeting and have first heard that, that's fine. But we have been talking about this for 2 years. And we're down to really three options. So whatever council decides, they're gonna have a plan how they're gonna pay for it, or how they're put up. So it's up to them. So the administration is just presenting that, this is what's gotta be done, you decide what you wanna do with it. We're not pushing any particular way, so.
Are there grants available for us?
No,
It's been checked into already?
yeah, long time ago, way ahead.
I'm not
of time.
talking $1 million grant, I'm talking 250,000 to
No.
lower the
No
water.
grants, period. You gotta find somebody to drop $1 million in our lap, then the council would
I'm
have to.
saying the 250,000
If you just let me finish, you keep interrupting. Just let me finish.
I'm up here
If
to
somebody,
speak.
I know, but if somebody would have the funding out there, or could, find anybody to donate, then that might make a little difference, but there's no grants on it. This has to come out of user fees. It can't come out of anything but user fees or. So just to give you, if the $1 million was to come all out of the water fund, just to give you a heads up on that. And you're gonna pay for it in the first year, pay as you go, it would be a 25% increase in rates, 25 for 1 year. So that's one option. If you borrow the money and pay it over 10 or 20, you can divide it and figure out what the amortization schedule would be then. But it's all gonna come out of user fees. Now, some of it may come out of, storm water, but eventually it's gonna have to be borne by the user fees, not by people who live out in the country. It's gonna have to be, it's gonna have to be borne that way. So that's what council has to decide,
It's important to note too that there are two fees we're talking about. We're talking the inundation study, which is anywhere from, and all that, which is anywhere from $250 to $350.
That's gonna be done
multiple hours.
anyway. That's gonna
And
be
then
done
another $250 to $1 million, whatever it is, on top of that. So we have two sets of fees. That first $250 to $350, whatever it is, we're on the hook for that. I mean, we've got to do that. We're going to argue that maybe you shouldn't have to, but we'll see where that goes.
We've already been doing work.
Yeah, I mean, they're already started that. A portion of that is for reservoir number 2, but we're kind of on the hook for that. I mean, I don't think anybody, as part of the emergency mapping and all that.
We keep lumping all the reservoirs in together.
For the inundation study, the inundation study required by ODNR covers all the reservoirs. And so we have to do that. no
But
matter
right now,
what.
we've got a deadline for the Pines.
Well, we have a deadline for all 4 of them.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, we have the deadline for all 4 of them.
So we have to have a plan for each and every.
Well, that mapping is, in case one of the dams fails or something like that. And that's required for all of our dams. If we spun one off, we would, that portion of whatever that total fee is, we may be able to avoid some of that, but we've got to do that anyways. But just when he's talking about $250 for draining it or, leveling it, that's on top of that other $250 to $350 that we've got to come up with anyways. So, yeah. So we
Okay,
have to get to
I
it.
got a couple questions back here, they've been waiting patiently. Kim?
Has anybody ever thought about, because, when I was in high school and the Othway Reservoir was finishing being built, we were told that we could swim, that they were gonna have a beach. And me and 2 of Sis's children went swimming because we thought we were allowed at first until we found out you weren't. But we never got that because evidently they couldn't buy the farmland that was like adjacent to it. Like they didn't get as much land as they wanted to make that happen. Has anybody ever thought about doing that? And is the city allowed to do that? Like if you excavated land and made a beach area after like repairs, of course, can you charge money? Like, and then make your money back that way? Like if you had a beach area and fishing and boating, like Delaware or something?
In a sense, I think you're taking it away from public use at that point, because now you're charging a fee to get in there. It's kind of privatizing it in a sense. Right now, it's completely public and free to use whenever you want, whereas if you do that and start charging a fee, now you're kind of privatizing it in a sense.
What about doing?
Not saying that you couldn't do that, though, probably.
Well, we charge to get in the pool in
Right.
the city. I mean, I was thinking,
We're talking about the city's water supply here. That's its primary function, is the city's water supply.
Right, but it's not now, we don't use
That takes
it.
precedent over everything else, is that it's the city's water supply.
No, I'm talking about the Pines, turning that into like a,
Oh, you were talking about Othway.
no, originally, because
Okay.
everybody thought we were getting a beach back then, why not make the Pines that, is what I'm saying, not the city water
She's saying make a
supply.
beach at the Pines and then charge
Pines
for
isn't that either.
Right, just as an option.
Silk and everything else the same.
Okay, I think Kurt, you have a question?
The ODNR's main concern was inaction. We hadn't shown any progress on anything. That's why they're finally, forcing us to do something. And Thursday night, it sounded like Mr. Murphy said his first plan was he was gonna go out there and cut the trees down that were around the embankment that were falling in. And that would probably be the easiest way to start showing a compliance action. So why can't we take money from the Tree City USA Fund, go out there, get those trees? That's gonna be the quickest way for us to show ODNR action. That way when we go into this October trial, we can say, hey, we're finally taking action on this thing. We've started the first process.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, there is no Tree City USA fund. We don't have a Tree City USA fund. It doesn't-
Where's the 20,000 going?
It's a tree maintenance fund. It's got nothing to do with Tree City. It's got the tree maintenance fund. And Pat Murphy was talking about the dead trees out there. If you take out a couple dozen dead trees, that's got nothing to do with the dam. I mean, it's, that they've been writing on since 1979.
But it would start showing that we're starting
No,
doing
I-
action.
I'm sorry, no offense, please don't take offense to this, but that would wouldn't mean anything to them. It's the dam, not the dead trees. Nothing is said about the dead trees. Pat Murphy was saying the dead trees are there because we've neglected it. Yeah, we've neglected it because it gets little use, number one. Number two, we don't have a big enough staff.
Well, we can hire the tree cleanup out. We got that
But
money.
why do that right now? Because if we breach it, it's not important to them. The dead trees aren't even mentioned. In
Well,
this.
it's not in their
No.
violation order?
No.
The tree's falling
Okay.
inside of it.
No, it's from Pat Murphy. And and if Pat Murphy, and for those of you who don't know, Pat Murphy would like to get ownership of the Pines Reservoir to keep it as a use for the community. Number one. Number two, the reason he wants to do that is because his family used to own that land, would be on his mother's side. And so he wants to regain ownership for his family, rehabilitate it, and put it to good use in a way that maybe the park district, if they had more money, could do that. Now, Pat has a degree in forestry. He also has a law degree, obviously, right? But his graduate is in forestry. He has contacts with ODNR. He plants trees. That's his hobby. Reclaims land. He's planted over 50,000 trees. So council will have to decide whether that's a good fit. But we presented the options there. Pat's been to at least 2 or 3 council meetings, offered to come tonight too. Whether you think Pat Murphy would be, whether it's Pat Murphy or somebody else, they still have to get approval. They still are on the hook for the dam. Anyway, so what we're doing, the option to sell
If
it
it's
to
private
Pat.
property,
Excuse me, sir?
If it's private property, DNR has nothing to do with it.
Well, yeah, the dam would still be, would take on the liability.
Oh, yes, they do.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
because people are
Yeah, they
dead.
do.
They still do, they would be on the hook for it, so.
Get his cut right into
Yeah.
that.
So could we put a deed restriction on?
I got a question over here, she's been waiting.
Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, go.
Oh, I was just wondering if he says he's gonna let us keep using it for public use, can we put a deed restriction on that says the public has forever use of it?
Pat Murphy's a businessman, and that's all it is. It's a business deal. Don't tell Mary any otherwise. He's there to make money like anyone else.
Okay, that's what, I understand you got your opinion, but let's just stick on, because we're gonna be here forever. We're gonna take it.
Kathy Fuller, 1107 South Sandusky Avenue. I'm against selling it. And I don't understand why the city of Bucyrus, with all the tax revenue, can't meet what Pat Murphy's gonna do. Maybe we should have a Pat Murphy plan. If he's concerned about it, maybe he could be in charge of a committee that's not gonna cost $1 million. Maybe you need a second opinion. Maybe you need the Army Corps of Engineers to look at it. Maybe, I'm against giving it away. Totally against, that's a lot of land and that's water.
Let's have a couple more questions and then we'll we haven't even started the committee meeting yet and then we can.
I just want to add one thing.
Okay.
The water is not potable. We don't use that in our city water system. ODNR, the EPA ordered us earlier in the year to cut off that water because it's not safe to drink. So it's never going to be used in city water, so.
Well,
How much is he offered for the land?
Haven't heard anything, I haven't heard
My
anything.
son
I haven't
wasn't
even, this was the
given-
first I
given
heard,
to him.
this was the first I heard he was gonna buy it. Earlier, there was a trade, and at the meeting Thursday, I never heard him say he was gonna buy it, he said he would pay for something, the
He said he'd
inundation
pay
or
for the
something.
inundation study and something else,
Yeah.
the data gathering or something, he said.
So let's.
How much?
Here.
How much land does he want? There's 160 some acres, some of it's farmland. Does he want just the
Sure, it's all-
reservoir?
I saw
Does anybody know that?
Not the farmland.
What's gonna happen to all the animals, the fish, the deer, the eagles? Like, is there a plan for that? Or do they just, you drain it and everything dies? I'm sorry.
I don't know.
You know,
I don't know, there's a lot of unanswered questions. All right.
Bill Sucker, 205 North Spring Street. I am also against getting rid of the Pines Reservoir. And also my understanding was that Pat Murphy does want to privatize this, turn it into a facility that people have to pay to use that property, not for use to the public.
Okay, and I'm welcome, you guys can call me anytime and we can talk about this, but we're kind of just throwing out ideas and stuff. And if I want to get this, I want to get the committee meeting in itself, and that may answer some of the questions that you guys are asking, okay? So, I don't, one more, okay.
If it's only 20 acres of land that can be sold, farmland is going for $8,000 an acre. It's 160.
It's something to look into. You guys had a lot of good ideas. I appreciate you coming out, but, you know, maybe if we get the committee meeting and we come up with something, then that'll answer some of the questions you have rather than just throwing questions around. Okay? Everybody agree? Okay. Okay. And I really don't want to cut anybody off, so I'll stay as long as you want to answer questions. So apparently this is on as a referral, and I don't know if it was that it, just for question and answer, or did we have more information, or?
No, we have nothing else to.
We have
He
nothing
gave you a
else?
copy of those orders that,
Just, you got a copy of yours, yeah.
Okay, well, and I don't know, I guess we have to figure something out as a committee.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Regarding the idea of selling land, I wish the auditor was here, or I could call the law director. I'm not, since that's a water fund, so it's an enterprise fund versus general fund.
correct, self-sustaining.
I don't think you can, my first input, of course, I'm not familiar so much with the legal aspect. I'm not sure you can use that money for that. I could get we could get a clarification from the law director on that if you like.
Okay, that'd be great, and while you're getting that clarification, ask him this. We no longer use it for water, why can't we turn it into a park? And then it doesn't have to come from that fund. So there's another option.
But what fund is it gonna come
It's
from?
gonna have to come out of general fund, which is not, I understand.
You're gonna have to borrow money.
Yeah,
We just don't have $1 million.
yeah, so, well, I'm just saying, you know, that's gonna keep from having to raise the water rates. You know, we may have to raise here.
If we put it in the park fund, is that going to cause problems with our parks?
Pardon me?
So if we change that over to a park, and then, I mean, our park funds are already struggling like they are,
Yeah.
so.
Exactly.
Well, I know, I'm just,
Exactly.
you know, it's just another thought, just like everyone else was
Yeah.
saying, you
I
know.
was just asking too, I didn't.
So, yeah, there's a lot of questions. I don't know if the committee has anything, but before, I'll let you guys say something here in a second, but before I lose my train of thought here. Well, I was thinking that before this 17th of October, that I think someone out there was saying, yeah, we should do something, at least do a couple of things that's on here. I don't know if it's going out and cutting trees off the dam, or, you know,
We did that, they did that about 4 years ago.
yeah.
But we got trees like this again.
Yeah, go out and cut the trees off and maybe take some pictures and I don't know, find some easy things on this. I know, when my wife says, hey, I'm going shopping, and I want you and the kids to clean up the house, I get the easy stuff first, again, I picked stuff up. And so, there may be some easy stuff on there we can get, and then, work from there. And
With a good show of intent.
it's a good show of intent, whether, I'm not saying dynamite the dam or anything, I'm just saying do some little things that, when we get to that point. So, but now, I guess the committee has to kind of decide or hash over what we want to do, so, it's just you guys, isn't it? It's you two here.
Three. And you're not on.
You're not on the committee, but you are a council member, we'll listen to you
Yeah.
too. So, any ideas, thoughts, or?
Well, I just didn't want to see the dam torn down. I mean, I know the engineering company met with us that one time, and they gave some bleak messages to us that, one of the options is actually breach the dam, and what would happen and transpire would they would have to create a stream bed back through the reservoir itself. And it would be a continuous draining type of system. Because it does drain all that farm ground out there, the Pfeiffer Farms, and I guess it drains the property south of 03330 there for the new highway. And personally, I don't want to see that happen. I mean, if there would be a way that we could, you got Pat Murphy, I know you're saying that you don't want a private developer, but in the meantime, I don't want to see the dam itself go away. I think it's an important asset to the entire Crawford County area. It's a viable alternative, I guess, at this point in time. I know right now, we're paying for a water filtration plant right now, and everybody's upset. We got that water filtration plant out of the flood zone, and we put a new plant in. And when they were talking about enterprise funds, your water bill is an enterprise fund. So when we went out and borrowed money to build a water filtration plant, the only way that water plant can be paid for is through our water rates. The reservoir always fell in underneath the enterprise fund, is how it was always set up. All the reservoirs are through that fund as far as I've always understood it to be. And I don't know, are the people out there willing to go out and have higher water rates yet? I mean, that's a question of mine. I don't know. I mean, if we could get every person in the county to buy our water, that would be better yet for an entire problem that we got at hand. I mean, that's a subject that is, very troubling. I don't know.
Anything done?
I don't have too much to say. I mean, I think a lot of the proof is right here in the paperwork we've been given, and the fact that this has been an ongoing issue since before I was even thought of. But I believe that Bruce brings up a very good point. I mean, if we are to go ahead and let's say, okay, we're gonna take this on and let's take the cheapest route that we can, let's slowly drain this thing and get it down below the level to where the dam's no longer an issue. The amount of money that's gonna cost that we don't already have right now, we're borrowing money to pay for things, and, I know that you brought up a very good point about the enterprise fund and increasing of rates, and I know I don't wanna be the one responsible for increasing anybody's rates right now, because I'm already crucified when I walk around this town. So, I feel horrible that this is the situation that we're in. I mean, my generation's the one that's paying for this. The fact that multiple generations before mine did nothing about it. So I'm upset at that, but at the same time, I have to look at things from a common sense perspective, and right now, with our tax base not being as large as it used to be and being a smaller base, we're not bringing in nearly the amount of funds that we used to bring in, and now we're trying to take on even more and more bigger projects. I know we didn't want to take on the sewer separation project. That was mandated by us through EPA. But it is what it is, and we have to do it, and we can't stop that to take care of this reservoir that ODNR is now on our case about. So, I guess if, we want to try and, let the people have a public hearing about raising their rates, if they're willing to take on some rate increases to possibly make this a viable opportunity, then I have no problem looking at it from that standpoint. But I agree that we do need to make sure that we protect ourselves from the liability of that reservoir and also the costs that we don't have the money for right now. So, but I'll do whatever the people in this community want. That's the way I vote. It's not about my opinion. So that's about all I got for you.
Well, you bring up a point, do we need a public hearing for?
Yeah, we can always schedule that.
Could-
I mean, it'd be, just a special committee meeting here of the public lands and buildings, and, we announce it like we announce everything else and invite the public in. They were all invited in this evening.
Well, you guys can maybe help pass the word around for us too, if we were to do something like that.
Yeah,
I've had people contact me that they thought, some of the people are for the idea of actually putting it out to bid. And then there's other people that know they're totally against it. The biggest thing is a way to fund it. I mean, I have no clear-cut way of funding it. Pat Murphy, he's saying that, he's willing to fund the dam study himself. He's already kind of taken the ball and run with it a little bit. And he's got big CT consultants out of Columbus.
Lynn McKeever's been helping him with
And
that.
then Lynn McKeever here locally. And CT consultants, they were involved in the city business from years and years ago, so, and they're well renowned, known for municipal type of operations, so.
Yeah, we're looking for some things.
So.
Okay, so here's what, I guess I have homework for the administration, because I think this question was asked, what is Mr. Murphy actually offering, Maybe we can have that
We can have him come in.
for this public hearing, and.
He was in last week, and we could have him come into the public hearing too, and he can explain it to everybody.
I think that'd fill in a lot of these gray areas on
Yeah.
what the assumption is that he's going to do.
And maybe we need to set up maybe we get 5 minutes or something,
Yep. We can
And
do that. We have a sign-in sheet.
have a
and everybody,
timer,
yeah.
and because they keep it a little more structured. And then one other thing I'd like to see is, and I don't need it really, I'd like to see if we did go ahead and if we decided to keep this, what would be the plan? I mean, because I think at this point, from 1978 until this point, we have not had any type of plan, And I'm talking, first we're gonna go, and we don't have to have the dates and anything, maybe we can throw those in later. But first we're gonna cut the trees off the bank, and then we're going to fill in the muskrat holes, and then we're going to,
Mr. Chairman?
yeah.
It's all about the dam. It's
Yeah.
not about the trees or the.
No, I mean the trees in the dam, but I know, reading that was one of the big things, was the trees
Yeah.
growing in the dam.
It's all how you gotta repair the dam.
But,
It's gonna be, replacing it is what's gonna have to happen. So the trees, cut the trees out, I'm sure would be a part of that, but they're gonna wanna see our financial commitment one way or the other. If we're going to go ahead and do this, we're gonna have to have a plan and roll with it, so. In other words, if we're gonna keep it, it's gonna be all or nothing.
yeah.
Because in other words, they can't say, well, we're gonna do the trees this year, and then the next year we're gonna list it, and the following year, they're gonna want it done immediately, so.
Mhm.
I would just gonna say, I kind of thought that, I mean, I'm not trying to reiterate what you just said, but that's, I think exactly what he's asking for, Mayor, is we just need to know if it's gonna be, okay, this week we're gonna do this, next week we're gonna do that, next week we're gonna do this, and this is the money, and that's where it's gonna go, so just a good start, I guess. I personally don't think that that's going to change ODNR after 40-some odd years, but if it will, then let's give it a whirl.
I think Sis said, this has been going on for years, and they rate the dams, and they've done the people's backs who had the riskier dams, and now they're down to us, and that's what it is. And these previous administrations have kind of, had notices, and for one reason or another decided not to do anything with it, but now
Well, in defense of previous generations, there was previous generations that paid 15 to 20% interest on borrowed money to build the off-weight. And that's what kept us hogtied for about 20 years in order to get that paid off. Because whoever it was that way back when, those loans could not be renegotiated at a lower interest rate. They had to be paid off in complete of what they were originally written for. As far as the storm separation, which is something else that we're deeply involved in now that we have a federal EPA mandate that we're following. In the 1980s, it was on the ballot twice in Bucyrus to take care of that. And each time the citizens, everybody voted, they said no. So nothing was done. So that are the things that got us to where we are. This isn't just simply where it's been that everybody's ignored it. It's been, money's been tied up everywhere, or the citizens said no. Well, the EPA didn't give us any choice when it came to the stormwater separation that we're into right now. But I mean, I'm probably because I'm older than all of you, I want to defend the generations that paid for that over all these years, And we've been busy trying to find other ways to raise more income for the city. That's why we're offering water to go outside of the city limits, because that's something we got a lot of. We've got 1 billion gallons sitting out there. And we'd love to sell it to everybody out there on Stetzer Road and everybody on Beach Grove Road and all the roads in between. We'd love to sell it. So we got some deals that are going to come to fruition here within a couple of years that we are going to be selling some more water. But that's in a couple of years. We're presented with this right now. What do we do with this right now?
Well, fortunately, if you do have to we're borrowing money now at a historically low level, just like when we finance the new water plant, that's under 2%, 20 years. So we were very, very fortunate to be able to get that loan. The rates that hadn't been raised in a long time, had to be raised fairly aggressively in a quick pattern, but in the long term, it's going to be a savings of about $15 million to residents over 20 years of what it would have cost. So those things that are overlooked, and of course, you brought up interest rates. Even though we're trying to catch up on these things, so we got that zero interest loan for EPA. And where would we be without low interest rates? We would be in very serious straits right now.
So we'll put together an agenda. We'll put together a time frame that we want to do that within. I assume we're talking within the next 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And
after the brown.
That's right, we got.
yeah, we're not doing it.
Yeah, no, please no, please no.
Please shoot me if you want to tell us. But we'll do what we can to get it going as fast as possible. And each one of you have specific questions, please submit them. If you have specific questions and things that you want to know an answer to, please submit them to the city.
Can I make a quick suggestion? That if we were to raise rates to keep the Pines, or to lower the Pines down the cheap route, what would be the average cost?
That would have to be figured out when we came to that time of figuring the loan and what the rate would be, and to figure out what
It's
the.
not possible to have something like that
Well, if it's,
for the town hall meeting.
if it's, yeah, I can tell you right now, that budget is about, our revenue in the water department right now is approaching $4 million. The total expenditures in the budget this year are $4.8 million. Right now, we're still a little short, but we're not spending everything. We're living off, right now, we're living off some money in the last 4 years that was built up in there, so we've to keep our rates, you know, at a very low increase as possible. So if you're looking at 300,000 to 400,000, you're looking at about 10% for 1 year.
For 1 year?
Yeah, 10% for 1 year.
12 bucks.
Could we put that in perspective on paper so people could see something like that?
Sure. 10% if your bill's. your
Now
water-
remember, it's not the whole bill,
Yeah,
it's just the
your
water.
So if your water's $30, it's gonna be
33.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind also that as rates go up, people use less water too, so,
Yes.
you know, so it may be 12 or 13%.
It doesn't look quite as bad when you do something like that.
Right, you know, like when they pass the levies, they say, well, a new school levy is gonna cost each house
Yeah.
$50, $13. Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
I know the Timken Company through the years and through the generations has been very generous to Bucyrus. I think their last donation was the mural, maybe,
Timken money is already earmarked for the next 2 years.
They build things, they don't tear things down.
building a,
You can build us a new dam.
geez.
I got a project for you.
Okay, like I say, the people out here, everybody on city council has an email. If you want to sit down and type a question, if you can't make it to this meeting that's coming, then, you know, we would be glad to read it. So you go to the city website and they all have emails, so you can contact us easily that way. Yeah.
So this hearing that we're gonna have, we're gonna
Yeah.
set a date tonight?
No, we're gonna have to get together
Okay.
with the rest of them, and let's get a clean date.
Okay.
We have been fighting the last 2 weeks, and with vacations, it's the end, you know, the end of the summer, and people are gone, and that's one of the reasons why we have 3 council members that aren't here this evening, is one's in an airplane somewhere above us, and one's just got home and had other things, issues going on, and the other one's at the Bratwurst Festival, since he's in charge of it. So, we need to get by all these things and work around that, so let's give us the opportunity, and especially Todd, so he doesn't go completely bonkers, getting time set up that, for availability. Because the council chambers is ours to use.
Yeah.
We can throw anybody else out.
Right.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we'll try to get the word out a little bit, you know, maybe we'll, we'll have, hopefully we'll have at least a week's notice.
Yeah.
Because we don't wait, it's not that we don't want to say, hey, it's in a month, because we need to work on this.
Yeah, we need this done.
October, yes.
We already have a council meeting scheduled for next Tuesday and committee meetings on the Thursday following that Tuesday. So we'll get something going, announce it at either one of those 2 meetings as to when this will be held.
Okay, so I think we've kind of beat that horse. So I guess
You've got a
then
special.
we have a special executive session, so I have to get to read this?
No, the mayor goes first.
Oh, the mayor goes first. Okay.
There's
Oh,
something
there.
here for me to read.
Must be.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. I request an executive session of the city council to consider the purchase of real property and personal property, whether it is tangible or intangible, or to consider the sale of real or personal property by competitive bid. ORC section 121.22 G2.
Do I hear a motion?
We'll make a motion.
Can you read that?
I move at this time that city council adjourns into executive session with all available elected officers of the Bucyrus City Administration and the Service Safety Director, if available, to consider the purchase of real property and personal property, whether it is tangible or intangible, or to consider the sale of real or personal property by competitive bid, ORC section 121.22G, section 2.
I have a motion that the city council adjourns into executive session with all available elected officials of the Bucyrus City Administration and the Service Safety Director, if available, to consider the purchase of real property and personal property, whether it is tangible or intangible, or to consider the sale of real property or personal property by competitive bid. ORC Section 121.22 G2. Do I have a second?
Second.
No, I'm sorry, you're not on the committee.
Oh. Thanks for your enthusiasm, Lillian.
Second.
Okay, so I'll do the roll call.
No, let Todd.
Oh, Todd will do the roll call. All right, Todd.
McKeever, Myers, Wireball,
Yes.
Trucca,
Yes.
Sack, Vogt,
Yes.
Schott.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Council recess to executive session at 7:05 PM.
I'm sorry, but executive session is for council members only. Thank you for coming this evening.
Thanks, everybody.
No, you just have to.
Are we on back?
I think, everybody from outside.
Are you up there, Gary? All right.
Ask
Gary's
for a
good.
motion.
I need a motion to adjourn executive session.
So,
And a second?
guess I don't have a choice.
No. Roll call, please.
McKeever, Myers, Wireball,
Yes.
Trucca,
Yes.
Sack, Vogt,
Yes.
Schott.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Council adjourn executive session at 7:17 PM. There is no report.
So you're back over to the.
Yep, that's
And,
it. Done.
Motion, okay, there is no report. Continue with the special meeting, got our directions here. Is there any public participation? No? Okay. I need
Yes.
a- What? Oh, okay. You had to be a tough guy.
Just one thing, yeah. If we have property such as Pines Reservoir that is such a financial burden at this time, I do not think that the city should be considering acquiring any other properties at all.
Okay, so noted. Can I have a motion to adjourn the joint committee meeting?
Joint special committee.
Joint special, typo. Joint special committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right,
Oh, you're wrong.
No,
so we adjourn at 7:18. Thank you all for coming.
thank you.